Hey, everybody. Welcome to Ballot Box with Bill Kristol and me, Tim Miller. It's 2024. We made it. We survived 2023. We have a long one ahead of us. And Bill, how's the new year?
It was very nice. We have a small dinner with friends, and we make in the last few years the custom has become to make predictions, which I'm always wrong about, of course. And
Okay.
so,
I'm
but
excited. What is your prediction?
unfortunately, our host insisted on predictions, so I couldn't decide. Since I'm always wrong, I thought I should predict that Trump will win the presidency, but I don't quite have the stomach to do that, honestly.
Yeah.
So I predicted it wouldn't be either Trump or Biden, which is just kind of like throwing away your vote.
Oh, you'll definitely be wrong about that. Okay. Well, we've
How
had a
about you?
lot
You
of
had a nice New Year's, wild time in New Orleans, Bourbon
wonderful. We
Street.
did have a wild time. We're at Tipitina's. Make sure to come visit. The best concert venue in town when you're here, and had a nice evening there. And I'll tell you more about it offline. But we've
That's
the
great.
people the
Tell you
people
guys.
are the people are here to hear in 2024. What are we going to do? How are we going to stop Trump? A lot has happened in the past. Oh, I don't know, week or so that give people different points of view on the right way to stop Trump. The Maine Secretary of State has said that we should do so via taking him off the ballot. Chris Christie is offering a different perspective than maybe Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis for how to handle Donald Trump. They don't have a general election, so I thought we'd go through all of these options, and then at the end, I would get your take on. Everybody cares about drama at Harvard, right? I mean, it's just student council drama. Everyone really deeply cares about who the president of
I've
Harvard
noticed that I've
Harvard is.
noticed that
Apparently,
not the whole world cares as much as tiny percentage of Harvard grads and people who care still. Even of Harvard grads, only a tiny percentage still care about what happens at Harvard. But whatever. A lot of them are on
the
Twitter, so
people care, and they will stay around for that. So anyway, let's start. Bill, where do you want to start? Maine, Nikki, you
let's start
pick.
with Nikki. The huge Nikki Mentum. 450 people at her town hall in New Hampshire tonight. She'll be second in Iowa. Then Christie won't will drop out the day after. It'll become one-on-one. And 46-44, Nikki over Trump in New Hampshire. It'll be so exciting on Tuesday night. 2 weeks from now, January 23rd, you'll flip on your TV if you still look online, more likely, and you'll see that big check mark next to Nikki. And
Okay,
it's
the people have
the
tuned this
world will
out.
change, Jim. The world will
The
change.
people have already tuned this out. That's obviously not going to happen. The question is, how how strategically should one be dealing with Trump at this point? I mean, I think that we can acknowledge many people, the comments. I'm reading your comments and we're taking your feedback. It's always going to be blowing up. It's Trump. It's Trump. It's Trump. It's probably Trump. Okay, it's probably Trump, and I think that we can spend a little bit of time here discussing the legal and the general election ramifications for beating Trump. But to the extent that there's still a primary going on, you've got Haley and DeSantis out there saying that they're going to pardon Trump, and I kind of continuing to read their talking points. And then you've had Chris Christie, that some, including some at the Bulwark, including me, frankly, at times, have thought that Chris Christie should be pressured to endorse whoever has a better chance of beating him as part of a game theory, where Trump is the highest and greatest threat. Is there anything that can be done to stop him? If Chris Christie believes that, then he shouldn't run through the tape in New Hampshire. He should endorse somebody. Chris Christie put out a video responding to that claim, basically saying none of these people are actually doing anything to stop Trump or can be trusted. And so at least I'm on the field. So I'm curious, as somebody that's interested in the game theory, where you kind of fall on that.
I mean, there's a 1 in 10, 1 in, I don't know, 15 chance that Trump could be stopped in the Republican primary. So it's very much worth taking that shot at him. Plus, if he has more trouble,
Was that 1 in 15, just 15, or was that 1 in 1,500?
15, 1
Oh,
in
one in
10.
15.
I'm an
Okay.
optimist. I'm not like, the, and so anyway, and anyway, the more votes he doesn't, the fewer votes he gets in the primaries, the more people will have been accustomed to not having voted for him who are gettable, maybe priable, some percentage of whom are priable away in the general election. There's quite a lot of data on that. You want people. So weakening Trump in the primaries as much as possible is good. A. B. I think Nikki's the only one now who has really a chance to do that in a sustained way. She can only do that if she beats him or comes very, very, very close to beating him in New Hampshire. That's in 3 weeks. Undeclared voters can vote there, and there is an effort, and I'm a tiny bit helping people do this, Primary Pivot is the name of the group, to really get undeclared voters who voted Democrat in the Democratic primary in 2020 for Buttigieg or Klobuchar or Biden or whoever, to vote in the Republican primary this time for Haley, even if they are going to vote for Biden in the general election. It's a little hard to sell that, to explain to people, because it's a little, counterintuitive to vote for someone you don't really want to be president, but it would be good to do in New Hampshire. She only gets a chance to win in New Hampshire. She's a clear second, in my opinion, in Iowa. So everyone in Iowa, less than 2 weeks from now, who doesn't want Trump to be the nominee, including Democrats, should show up at the Republican caucuses in Iowa, ask for a ballot, and vote for Nikki Haley. So I'm pro Nikki, despite the slavery stuff, despite she's going to pardon, despite she's making it hard, I'd say, for someone like me to kind of
I would say
keep my enthusiasm up for this. But one thing, Tim, about you gotta just overcome these hurdles. You gotta go over the obstacles here. And
I gotta tell you,
that's my view.
I gotta tell you, you're not selling me. And not only are you not selling me on participating in this effort to try to help Nikki, you're not even selling me on the fact that you believe that this is a worthwhile effort. It seems like you feel like you have to say this because, whatever. Because yes, it's better to try than to not try. I do agree with that. But as somebody that has been, I would say, violently against Chris Christie, maybe more so among anyone at the Bulwark, because of his behavior in 2016. I'm kind of compelled by his argument at this point, and here's why. And I think that AB has a good piece in the book that people should read. That the premise of it is basically Chris Christie should stay in, and he should stay in because the voters need to hear what he's saying, and they need to make the case. And Nikki Haley has essentially disqualified herself by all the various things which you just listed only some of, but mostly she's disqualified herself by kind of maintaining this like level of obsequiousness to Trump, even now, right? Even despite the fact that they're on the premise of being in an election against one another here in 2 weeks, and that it's better to have him on the field, and it's better to have somebody in the Republican primary in the field who runs to the tape and who then goes and endorses Joe Biden in the presidential, because they gave it a good faith effort within the party, and the party rejected them, and now they see they're dealing with the options they have on the field. I don't know if Chris Christie will do that. I've been let down by Chris Christie many, many times before, so I'm not exactly holding out hope or counting on it. But I do think that to me has a rationale behind it, that endorsing Nikki's hopeless effort 3 weeks before she endorses Trump in the hopes of being his VP. I don't know. I don't like that. I'm not buying it, really.
I don't think Christie needs to endorse Nikki. A, he should run hard for the next 2 weeks and attack Trump. B, if Nikki is second in Iowa and it looks like there's a chance she could win New Hampshire, Christie simply has to say, it looks to me like Nikki can win New Hampshire. Vote for Nikki in New Hampshire. He doesn't have to take himself off the ballot in subsequent primaries. If Nikki falls short and it gets clobbered, and Trump can show up in later states and make the case. I just think Trump making the case and getting 12, 15, 18% of the vote in primary after primary, almost no delegates, almost does no good. He'll either endorse Biden or he won't. I think he will. The idea that he has a lot more oomph in that endorsement if he has stayed in and lost 37 consecutive primaries to Trump, I'm a little dubious about that. So I think this is the moment. This is the one chance, the 1 in 10, whatever chance that one has to really derail.
1 in 110.
Exactly. Derail or no, you're too, you never know. Stuff happens. Derail or disrupt Trump. I feel like people should take it. I think it is Haley.
I will say last week the comment section was kind of rude. I don't know. It was maybe people were feeling grinchy after Christmas, and people are in high spirits right now. We have several people complimenting my haircut, and several people talking about how the images of Trump from New Year's make them think that maybe Trump doesn't make it till the election. He is starting to look a little haggard. Even you could see the lines are starting to break through the caked on orange makeup, which I think is something that is telling. Thank you, Connor. But a couple of the other comments, one thing that I didn't mention in the lead-in, but I think is worth talking about within the context of the primary. Who was it? Diane asked if the Steve Scalise endorsement of Trump really means anything. And well, I know what I think. What do you think? Just we were both kind of tweeting about this. There was a Politico article today about how it's not just Scalise, but another number of other senator types. The kind of backbench senator types, the John Hovens of the world, were starting to endorse Trump now. What's your assessment of whether that matters or not in the primary?
I mean, it matters because it tells us a lot about the Republican establishment, so-called establishment, which is not an establishment that's willing to defend the established Constitution, but just cave to Trump, the Vichy establishment. I mean, it really is extraordinary, right? You've made this point so very well. I think we now have 18 senators for Trump and 0 for Nikki or DeSantis.
Yep.
We have 94, something like that, members of the House for Trump. I think 5 for DeSantis, 1 for Nikki. You see these little clips, Paul Ryan and others. Yeah, Trump's a problem. We don't want Trump again. Well, whatever you think of my theory that Nikki has a 1 in 10, or maybe it's 1 in 50 chance of winning, this is the moment if you think you don't want the Republican Party to nominate Trump to step up. You don't have to do what I'm saying. You don't have to go to New Hampshire and campaign and urge undeclared voters to go vote against Trump or anything like that, or go to Iowa. But you should do something practical, as opposed to giving one interview somewhere where you express your dissatisfaction with the fact that it's now Trump's Republican Party. But as you've pointed out many times, they're not just, some of them are not expressing, they're not doing anything. And most of them are just getting on board. And almost all of them are going to end up getting on board, right? I mean, except for
except for Mitt and maybe 1 or 2 others. Yeah, I agree with this. And without just repeating everything you said, I just think the one thing to put a finer point on is, do I think that any voters are changing their mind in this primary because of what Steve Scalise or John Hoeven or John Thune or whoever do? I do not, right? I do not think that the endorsements are really driving votes per se. But I think the inverse is pretty important, right? Like, what does it say about the Republican Party? What does it say about them that they are endorsing Trump already before these votes happen? And I think there it's really quite meaningful. I think it's quite meaningful in showing the change from 2016 and the way that Trump has changed the party in ways that a lot of people that are still in our former colleagues just don't want to admit. I mean, at this time in 2016, January 2, 2016, Trump had 1 congressional endorsement. 1, Jeff Sessions. That was it before the Iowa or New Hampshire. Now he has all of them, essentially, right? So that is after we've seen 8 years of Trump. After everything, Muslim ban, after January 6th, the party has gotten not just like a little bit more Trumpy, but overwhelmingly more, at least accommodationist of Trump, right? However you want to put it. And it has definitely gotten more Trumpy too, but overwhelmingly more accommodationist. And as much as Trump is winning in a landslide in the primary, the landslide in the endorsement count is even greater. And that is where you'd think that'd be more of a lagging indicator, right? You'd have these wise men, graybeards in the Senate that would be holding on hope for the old party. And that's not even happening. I think that's really quite telling.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I hadn't really thought about the sequencing point that you make, which is an important one. In a normal world, or what was once a normal world, if you didn't want to endorse, you waited till after someone had won, basically. And then you said, or maybe you endorsed Bush and then supported Reagan once Reagan won the primary. So you waited till your state voted and said, well, gee, in my state, they prefer X, so I'm going to go with that. These people are so eager or so terrified that they're jumping on the train before they even normally would have to. It's like, it is preemptive capitulation. It's Vichy, but it's Vichy in 1938, not even after, they lose the war and Paris falls in 1940. It's really pathetic. I mean, the combination of the acquiescence, the fatalism, the lack of any spine and just self-respect. Scalise probably would have been speaker, don't you think? You followed this probably close. If Trump didn't support him, right? And maybe even kind of weighed against him, I think, a little bit, or So
Scalise, Trump killed him basically. I mean,
that's right. I guess it was in the middle of that day. Yeah.
Could he have been speaker? I don't know. Like, would 8 people still held out? Maybe. But Trump certainly didn't do anything to help him and actively harmed him. And here he is, like, thank you, sir. May I have another? And it goes back to the whole the old meme about how we've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas. They say what you want. I respectfully disagree, I think, with your approach with regards to Nikki Haley at this point. I might have agreed more 6 months ago, but at least it's at least it's an honest effort, right? At least it is an effort to say, hey, what can we do to try to stop this person that we know is a threat? And these people are all like, we're going to complain about him to Bob Costa on background and then hope something happens. That's crazy.
To make a finer point just put one finer point of your finer point, which is, just think about Scalise for a second. He's not going to be primary. What's the usual excuse? Well, man, they're going to have primary challenges. They don't do this. Really, these senators, some of them aren't up. next year. Steve
Right.
Scalise is not going to have a primary challenge in Louisiana. If he does, he'll win 75-25 against
Right.
some MAGA type. So this is pure. I don't even know what it is. I mean, it's just
It's capitulation. It's
it's
just
either
pure
capitulation or, you
capitulation.
know what? You've said this, JVL said this, we've all said this. You know what? They kind of like Trump. A lot of them. They're
Right.
not. For all the grumbling to Bob Costa, A, there's probably a little less of it than people think, and
Yeah.
B, there's quite a lot that, they half grumble, and half of them thinks, yeah, but man, Trump could win, and I'll be okay, and I'll have good relations with him, and I can do business with him, and so they're not looking thinking, boy, that's really problematic to have Trump January 6th. Ooh, ooh,
Yeah. All right. How to beat Trump option 2. The courts. We did Colorado a couple weeks ago, whenever that happened. So we don't need to belabor it too much. But now we have Maine, another state. Charlie in his newsletter this morning. If you're not signed up, just get it to the all free. Sign up for the blog newsletters. I think makes quite a compelling case, basically pushing back on the people who argue that it's anti-democratic to pull him off the ballot, making what had traditionally been a classically conservative case, right? That we don't live in a pure Athenian democracy. It's a constitutional republic, and liberal democracy is based on the rule of law, and part of that is the courts and constitutional rule law. And if Trump is violating the Constitution, then it is not anti-democratic to have him take him off the ballot. That's the way that our system works. And I find that somewhat. I would find that a little bit more compelling if the 14th Amendment, Section 3, was not written like it's Chaucer. If it was a little bit clearer, I would find the argument even more convincing. But that said, there's something to be said for it. So do you have any updated thoughts now that we've had a second state since we last kind of discussed the legal option?
And I read a little bit more about Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. I think the argument for the propriety of striking Trump from the ballot is stronger than I realized. That it's an actual matter of interpreting what the authors of the 14th Amendment meant. And then I'm not an originalist or a textualist. I'm kind of more of a, judges should use prudence and common sense as well. And in those respects, I'm pretty wary of doing it for kind of obvious reasons. And I don't think it's going to work anyway. I don't think the Supreme Court's going to uphold the Maine Secretary of State or the Colorado Supreme Court. But I do think, to be fair to especially the Colorado court, but even the Maine Secretary of State, they have these cases are presented to them. They have to make a decision. I mean, it's now being appealed in Maine and so forth. It is a legal process. People are treating, the anti-Trump people are all speaking as if, well, there's Trump, he's got January 6th. Someone wrote a piece like this, is Flight 93, theorizing on the Trump side. And this is their equivalent on the anti-Trump side. Really, writing a judicial opinion that interprets the section not implausibly of the Constitution and then lets it get appealed. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to happen. I think he'll be on the ballot.
I agree with that. There's something that's kind of my contrarian streak gets satisfied by the idea of Brett Kavanaugh doing a face turn.
Right.
and being, after all of the drama and controversy surrounding the Brett Kavanaugh nomination, have him be the resistance hero. Have him and Roberts siding with the Democrats to uphold Colorado. Not going to happen, but sometimes a boy can dream. Sometimes I fantasize about that. I agree with everything you said. The main thing was, I find the pearl clutching about the democracy element. How about this is democratic to be like pretty childish, frankly. And I agreed with Charlie's points on that in the newsletter today. But overall, I just think prudently and practically, like, this is not going to happen. Okay. General election, we'll have much to talk about this, but in the how to stop Trump thing, if we placed our odds quite low, maybe not as low as me, on a primary victory or a legal attempt, how are you feeling week 1 of 2024 about the Joe Biden efforts, and kind of whether things are moving the right direction there, or whether your concerns still remain?
I think they're pretty much. I don't think they've gotten worse. I don't think they've gotten appreciably better. Maybe a tiny stabilization of Biden's fall in the polls a little. And I think Noah Smith's point was 3-4 weeks ago when we were around together with him on Thursday night, the Thursday night bulwark, that maybe there's a delayed effect of the economy being good, and people gradually realize that inflation is down and the economy is quite good and stock market's high and stuff. And maybe that kind of kicks in a little more, and 2024 for Biden. So I'm sort of open to that proposition, but it's an awful lot closer than one would be comfortable with.
Yeah.
And Biden's not getting any younger. I can just make that point.
401ks had a great month in December. I'm just saying. I don't know. The vibe, maybe it's self-selection. It did feel to me like the vibes this holiday season were a little different than last year. Just, among my non-political friends and family I was with, I don't know, was with a ton of swing voters in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, but just as a general sense of, people's feelings of uncertainty, feelings about the economy, does feel like there's a little more optimism. I need to go back to the main thing one more time because of a comment in here. Who was it here? Somebody says, Jeff says, get Judge Ludwig in here. I have nothing but respect for Judge Ludwig, okay? But this is the point that we're dealing with in these cases, is everyone is kind of making a judgment call. Like, this is not a situation where it's like you have to be 35 to run. Okay, that's like not how the 14th Amendment Section 3 reads. And anybody who hasn't read it, I think we read it 2 weeks ago on this stream. You can go read it yourself if you haven't. It isn't that clear. Okay, it's a little bit gray, and people of good faith can make cases about arguments about the best way to deal with these sorts of issues. And I just would say that I would assume whoever is commenting this that's on Ludwig's side this time was against him when the roles flipped, back 3 years ago in January, whenever it was in January 2021, when you and me and others were saying that the Senate should convict Trump. And he was saying that, if you read the Constitution, like, maybe you can't convict somebody that was no longer president, right? That was Ludwig that was making that case. It gave McConnell a little bit of cover. So I have nothing but respect for him, but I just think that these are close calls.
Yeah, 2 points. I mean, impeachment and conviction was the way to solve this problem. I mean, we should just never let go of that fact. And those 10 Republican senators who did not join the 7 Republicans, was it 50 Democrats, who voted to convict, really have a huge burden. I mean, they would have disqualified, and it would have, they could have challenged that a little bit, but I think that would have been a much easier case to make, that the impeachment conviction brings with it disqualification. In fact, I think you could specify the conviction. Right. It does. The other thing is, I mean, I like Mike Ludwig. I know him pretty well, and I respect him highly. Mike Ludwig wasn't making this argument in 2021 or 2022 or early 2023. And the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment didn't change in that time. They're all making the argument because of a very interesting law review article by Will Bode and a guy named Paulson. He's a very respectable law professor too, but Will's the one I know personally. I've done a conversation with him, and they really went into the detail, and everyone said, "Wow, look at that!" And that's good. I mean, you want people to take fresh looks at the history, to think through the constitutional implications, and then other people, Larry Tribe and Mike Ludwig, wrote pieces based on the law review article. On the other hand, if you don't quite want to, based on a new interpretation. Not new in the sense of made up, but new in the sense of rediscovered, let's just say, interpretation of the law, in the middle of 2023, you're suddenly going to really disqualify one of the 2 leading candidates from the ballot. I mean, there wasn't a huge uproar when he announced, as I recall, in November of 22, he can't run, he's disqualified. So if this had been a 50-year doctrine that had been debated and stuff, I think we would all feel, okay, and then it was litigated in 2021 and 2022. I think we would feel much more comfortable, if I can put it that way, than sort of popping it on everyone because a couple of law professors did some very good research. As I say, I respect these law professors and I respect Ludwig, but it's not quite the way you want to govern yourself, ideally. Having said that, if people
we take it.
Over it, right?
I absolutely think that's very, very well put, and I'm happy that I circled back to it because I think that is well taken and better than I would have said it. Okay, we got to do it before we let people go. There's been a little drama. There's a little cafeteria drama at your alma mater. I have to tell you, the only Harvard president that I could name before the current Harvard president was Larry Summers, and that was only because of his star turn in The Social Network. I don't make it a habit of caring about who the president is of Ivy League universities. I can't say that I know any school presidents besides the several former Republican legislators who are school presidents. I keep hearing that higher education is very hostile to Republicans, but we just today, Congressman Bill Johnson, a Republican of Ohio, left Congress to become head of Youngstown State. Ben Sasse left to run Florida. So, apparently that is an acceptable place in certain universities, but it caused a lot of stir. And so I just have to ask you, Where are you? Are you upset? You know, were you happy about the defenestration of her? What are your big takes?
No, I was a critic of hers, and the more that came out, the more critical I became. At first, I thought probably a little overdone, these charges of plagiarism. I do think she handled post October 7th developments badly, including on campus. And I talked to people on campus who really, it was not, they didn't feel safe, and they really were being, bullhorns people were using bullhorns to interrupt classes and so forth. And then obviously the testimony for Congress, and then the plagiarism stuff. Better that she left. But I do think the degree, and so fine. And so they'll have the president, and that'll be that. I mean, the idea that people are, be nice if some of these people who've been devoted so much time and effort to removing Claudine Gay as president of one of the 3,000 colleges and universities in America, or even if you want to be elitist, one of the 25 or 50 prestigious universities, most prestigious universities in America. As you say, not someone who makes a huge difference as to what actually happens in the classrooms at Harvard, incidentally. It's nice if people spent, a little bit of that effort to prevent Donald Trump from becoming the next president, not of Harvard, but of the United States of America. And the president of the United States, I'm going to clue you in on something here, has a lot more power than the president of Harvard, and could do a lot more damage to the country than the president of Harvard, or even the presidents of Harvard, Penn, and MIT together. And the idea that the entire center-right sort of ecosystem is all at a state, and I'm like, as I say, I was on their side on the Claudine Gay thing. But as Trump, I mean, that's really complicated. We can't really weigh in against Trump, and you have to understand there are grievances that might lead to Trump, as if there weren't, so that part annoys me.
Yes, and on top of that, you have to say that not only are they not really even going after Trump, a lot of times they're kind of running cover for him. I mean, just today, in the Free Press, Bari Weiss's outfit again. I probably agree with Bari on like 90% of things, and I agree, and I'm with you on the Claudine Gay thing. I literally don't care, but like if I had to set be on one side or the other, I'd be on the side of sure they should replace her with somebody that hasn't plagiarized. And the way that they handled the anti-Semitic questions was obviously terrible, but you have to make judgments in life about like what are the most important things if you're running these influential news and opinion outfits. You have to make these cases. These guys are going all in on her. Today, Bill Barr is published in the Free Press making this argument that the court cases against Trump, these 14th Amendment cases we've been discussing, are a great threat to the democratic order. And it's like, are they? I mean, isn't the democratic order working as it should? Like one a Supreme Court in a state reviewed it. Now it's going to be reviewed in the upper courts. I mean, this was a man that 3 weeks before January 6th was talking about how great Donald Trump was when he resigned, and he wasn't warning people about threats to the democratic order. So he's kind of come around and says some of the right things in interviews, but just the intensity to say how you were making this comparison, the intensity of just the vitriol towards Claudine Gay and the importance of removing her versus just this very passive, both sidesy, kind of dealing with of Trump just seems very wrongly prioritized. How about that?
Yeah, she should mobilize her supporters and ask them to march on University Hall and prevent her from being unjustly expelled by the Harvard Corporation or something. Just on this 14th Amendment thing, which is in a way more interesting when you think about it than when it starts off. Maybe thinking, as I say, I still think it's imprudent and probably shouldn't. If I were on the Supreme Court, would probably go with a respectful, but no, we're not going to do this here. It's just too much to ask the courts to do this. Having said that, it's not as if there would be no Republican candidate for president if this happened. If it happened, I mean, the Republicans would reconvene on what they would do with the primaries that had passed and who the delegates would be. Is a little complicated, but there would be a Republican convention, and they would select Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis,
possibly a more electable person,
someone else we don't like that much, but someone who the Wall Street Journal likes better, and Bill Barr allegedly likes better. And they would be able to vote for that person for president. So the notion that this is like an unbelievable assault on the constitutional order is ridiculous. Makes you wonder, do they really not want Trump to be president again? That's why I guess they're not stupid, these people, right? And if you and I can see this contradiction in 30 seconds, I don't know, maybe they want the credit of saying they don't want Trump. But do they really care about it? Do they really not want Trump?
It's a good question. We're going to leave it there, except for, have you had a Sherman-esque statement about the Harvard president gig? You know, new woke Bill Kristol, maybe you might be somebody they would consider.
No, I know. I'm ducking the phone calls. I'm not quite ready to go for Sherman. You know,
Yeah.
I'm just. I want to see how it shakes out a little bit. You know,
I'm going to
so
see how it shakes out.
keeping
Okay.
my options open. You know.
Not a hard no. I think, well, I would be sad to lose our Tuesday nights because I think you'd have a lot of obligations sucking up to rich people to
Oh, are you
maintain
kidding?
that
This would come
gazillion.
first, and no question. Oh, are you kidding? I'm not taking the Harvard presidency if I have to give up my contributions to various bulwark, YouTube and podcasts and print
Wonderful.
obligations.
Well, then I'm endorsing your candidacy. Thank you, Bill. We'll be back next Tuesday. It will be our last get together before the Republican voting starts, because it will be 13 days from now. We have the Iowa caucus, so we'll see you next Tuesday. Back on this feed tomorrow with the next level. JVL and Sarah. Charlie's back from vacation. You can get his podcast every day. Make sure you've subscribed to our YouTube feed, signed up at thebulwark.com for the newsletters. Get all the shit you're going to need here in 2024. It's a big year. William, good luck in the Harvard presidency campaign.
Tim, with your endorsement, I think it's probably going to happen, frankly.
I agree. We'll see you next week, brother. Bye, everybody.